guys? We're back at it again with another Nom Studios podcast. Today we have elder care, elder law attorney
Estate planning and elder law.
estate planning and elder law attorney Nicole Palermo. We met at Big Networking Group. Is that what is it? Big
I forgot what it stands for.
Yeah, I forgot what it stands for too. Don't kill us, James.
Yeah, sorry.
But yeah, I mean, I took to you because, I mean, I've known a couple of estate planning and elder law attorneys in my professional life, but like every time you talk about it, it's so interesting.
That's nice to hear.
It's so much fun.
Yeah.
So, I mean, just introduce yourself, tell us what you do, and like, why did you get into like estate planning and elder law?
Absolutely. Obviously, I'm Nicole. You know that. And so I founded my law firm, the Palermo Firm, I would say in 2021. And I got into it because it's really important to me to be a people-focused law firm. I like estate planning and elder law because it's really about the families and making sure that, families and their loved ones are taken care of. It's obviously, doing the same trust day in and day out. Nothing's like too drastically different about that 90% of the time. But, talking to people, listening to their stories, finding out what's wrong with them, how I can help, that is the really fulfilling part of it.
Okay. And you started in 2021.
Yeah.
When did you pass your bar?
2017.
Okay, so what were you doing between 2017 and 2021? Were you still in
I
trust?
was doing litigation.
Okay.
So I did litigation for a while. I took in 2021, before I started my firm, I took a really intensive course to learn about estate planning, and elder law and how to start my firm. And it was so helpful to really be able to build up my practice in that way. I had access to a fantastic network of, educated individuals and attorneys who were able and still are able to, answer any questions you have, teach you about the tax law, teach you about everything you needed to know. And obviously, of course, I took those courses in law school,
Mm-hmm.
and I had done trust, wills, powers of attorney. Everybody does that pretty much in every law firm they work for. I think if you work for a small enough firm, you always do a little bit of something.
Yeah.
But it was important to me to be able to make a real concrete difference. I think litigation is very combative, and nobody leaves feeling good even if you win, because nobody likes to get sued. But here you make a real difference. You know what I mean? You can leave, or I can end my day knowing that people's lives are set up the way they're supposed to be. And especially with elder law and crisis planning, where it's a real problem that's happening right now, I can immediately say, thank God this person's taken care of. Thank God they have care in their home, that either they don't have to go into a nursing home or they don't have to lose their house to get care. And that is so fulfilling.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
And obviously a lot less nerve-wracking and stressful.
I mean, it's not like it's not stressful,
Yeah.
people's livelihoods and their homes, but I think it's less combative. It's collaborative, which is what I really like.
Yeah, and I love your stories. I mean,
Oh my God, my horror stories.
They're so fun.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a horror story? Like, I don't want to hear one. I want to hear a new one.
A new one. I don't know which one you haven't heard yet. So
Okay.
I will try. Okay, so I have to change the information. So I had a husband whose wife passed away, and she had 3 cars in her name and an RV. And you're like, they were only in her name though. There was nobody else on the title. And so I think what people don't realize is that in New York State, when somebody passes away, a spouse is only entitled to transfer 1 motor vehicle to themselves if the value's under $25,000. And there's only 1. So this woman died and 3 vehicles were in her name and an RV. So now, unfortunately, we have to open a full probate for 2 vehicles because the husband was able to transfer 1 to himself and an RV. And we're going to have to wait months to get these letters, and they're just going to sit in the driveway. They can't be used. They can't be driven. They can't be insured. until we get this information from the court.
Jesus Christ, and that takes months. How much does that cost?
It depends on how complicated the matter is. It depends on how I structure it. It depends on what goes into it. Some people, I'll do a simple flat fee, maybe a couple $1,000s if there's not that much that goes into it. But more complicated probates will typically be per hour, right? It'll be $300, $400, $500 an hour, and they could go on for years. I have several probates that have been going on since 2021 that even inherently aren't that complicated. There's just a lot of people involved, or the properties won't sell, or the courts are just held up. I mean, since COVID, I could have a probate that goes for 4 months, or I could have a probate that goes for years. And there's no rhyme or reason to when the court decides to give me letters.
Jesus Christ. And how do we avoid all that? Is that like a trust? Just putting like...
No, I mean, I obviously, I think everybody needs an estate plan. And I'd say, as I said in the meeting the other day, 100% of the people in that room need a will, and 90% of them at least probably need a trust.
Okay.
I never go into a meeting and tell people you definitely need a trust without saying a single word to them, because you never know what their situation is. There's always ways around things, and there's different types of planning. And you also have to think practically about it, right? Like, what are people willing to do? Because just creating a trust is just one step of it.
Yeah.
You also have to do what's called funding the trust, which is kind of a misnomer, because what it really is just retitling assets into the name of the trust. But that varies depending on what the asset is. So for a deed, for a piece of real property, for example, you have to do a new deed and you have to file it with the county, and the county charges you a fee.
Yeah.
For something like a bank account, stocks, investments, you would retitle it instead of it being in.
And that doesn't really cost anything.
It's not that it costs anything. Some people just don't want to do it.
Yeah.
And I would say actually cars are some of kind of my biggest conundrums, because unfortunately, and if I could pass like one like silly law, it would be, I would beg the New York State legislature to just pass a law giving us transfer on death designations for motor vehicles.
Okay.
And the reason that I want that is because it would make it just a million times easier for everybody.
Okay.
The truth of the matter is putting a car in a trust is a pain in the butt. You have to go to the DMV. You have to notify your insurance company. They give you new plates. I tell people most of the time when we're working with them, if they're married, I say the safest thing you can do is make sure both spouses are on all vehicles.
Yeah.
But you know, when you buy your next car, put it in the trust. Don't start out now. But even then, getting a car lien, right, or a car loan with a trust could be complicated because they may not want to loan to a trust.
Yeah.
So I tell people, if you have a car that's vintage, nostalgic, valuable, you're going to keep it for the rest of your life, put that in your trust. For example, my husband has a Dodge Challenger that I swear to God he wants to get buried with. And so that's something.
What year?
2017. It's not old or anything. He just really likes his car. And whereas like I change my car out every like 3 years or so, I get bored. So that's something that would go in the trust, because that he is going to keep that car into infinity, right? Whereas like the little Nissan I used to drive, I'm not so concerned. My husband would just be on the title with that.
Okay. What about when it comes to, okay, you said bank accounts, you said cars, you said
retirement accounts is what I didn't talk about.
Yeah, retirement accounts.
So
I mean, funny enough, because right now I was with a financial advisor, and that financial advisor left the place. I was like, why am I paying an extra percentage to pay financial advisors when I did my due diligence when I was younger about like ETFs or whatever. I don't do options trading, but like I'm pretty good with investing my own money. I don't need a financial advisor. So I'm transferring it from under them back into my own like self, whatever account. And as I'm doing it, it's like, who to put as a beneficiary, and then the kids, and then the what? Yeah, like.
Well, we're going to talk about that. I know we have our own appointment, but a general rule is never, ever list a minor child as a beneficiary on an account. That is the most dangerous thing that you can do for yourself and your loved ones.
Though. I think there's beneficiary, and then it asks something else. It's like contingency.
Same concept.
Okay.
Never list a minor child as a primary beneficiary, a contingent beneficiary, or anything like that.
Why not?
A minor child cannot inherit assets outright. It is a guaranteed way to put that asset into probate court. So typically, a beneficiary designation will actually avoid probate court if you put an adult there, right? So let's say I list my husband as a beneficiary on my savings account. God forbid something happens to me. He shows them my death certificate and they give it to him.
Yeah.
Unless, and I put a child on there, right? Let's say my cousin, Emerson, right? If I list Emerson as a beneficiary on that account, he can't inherit it because he's a child. So instead, what will happen is that you will have to open a probate in order to get that asset distributed to that minor child, because the court has to appoint a custodian to manage that money for the child until they become 18.
Okay.
Horrifying.
But I mean, I don't get that though, because, all right, let's say you have your husband on your 401k, IRA, Roth, whatever it is.
Well, let's stay away from retirement accounts for a second, because those are slightly more complicated.
Let's
talk about an investment account.
Okay, so you have your husband on your investment account.
Yeah.
And then you have a kid or two, and then they're like the secondary.
Yeah.
You're saying that even if your husband is still the primary, it's still going to go to probate. But if your husband
just if something happens to your husband.
Yeah.
But as we saw with that terrible incident in New York City with the helicopter, you never know what's going to happen. You and your spouse could pass. You and both of your children could pass at the same time. And if you don't have the proper plan in place, you are not going to like what New York State's plan is for you.
Okay. So the best thing right there is to put everything in a trust.
Again, it depends. But I think the best thing that anybody can do is speak to an estate planning attorney, whether it's myself or somebody else, because I am not going to know what the best thing for somebody is until I talk to you. I learn about you, your loved ones, your values, what's important to you, who you like, who you don't like, what you have, and where you want it to go.
Okay. All right. Well, what I'm hearing is, when in doubt, just trust.
Yes, I do think. I think for many families on Long Island and otherwise, trusts are going to be really helpful. It's going to be a nice, easy way for your kids to inherit real property, for your minor children to have their money managed for them until they're a little bit older. But everybody's different. I would say, in general, if you have a minor child and you own a house, a trust is going to be a smart thing to at least consider.
Okay. And can you put anything in a trust? Like you said, land, you said retirement, investment accounts, retirement accounts.
Sort of. So retirement accounts are a little different. An IRA, right? Individual retirement account. Like an IRA, retirement accounts can only be owned by an individual. So instead, this is where we will rely on beneficiary designations, because the Secure Act, which is kind of the rules and regulations surrounding retirement accounts, dictate how they can be distributed, how quickly they have to be distributed. So typically, if you have a spouse, it actually makes more sense to list them directly. If you have a minor child, or even if you have other considerations for your adult children, you would list the trust as a contingent beneficiary.
Okay. And then now we're getting into like the business side of things.
Yeah.
Like, what if you own a business and obviously you might have a partner, you might not have a partner. How do you go about that?
Absolutely. So it'll depend how your business is structured, what your business does, what its purpose is, what you want it to happen after you pass away. I think typically what we'll do, let's say you have a single member LLC, you own a couple rental properties, something like that, we'll assign your interest to the trust itself.
Okay.
Because if Theo, for instance, owns a business outright and Theo passes away, God forbid, nobody can really step up unless there's proper business planning done as well. I would hope that, within your own business, you would have somebody step up, but your interest in the company itself has to go somewhere.
Okay. That's interesting. Interesting. So how do you like bridge this conversation with it's easy to bridge this conversation with someone like me, but how do you bridge this conversation with like older individuals? Because I know, being Haitian, you're probably going to talk to my parents, but that's a conversation they try to avoid as much as possible.
It is. It's definitely tough to talk to your parents about it. A easy bridge can be news stories. I heard so-and-so passed away. They didn't have a will. terrifying. You know, if they're interested in the news, that's always a popular thing. If they know your friends or their family or an acquaintance, you can say, oh, so and so was telling me about, you know, what's happening with his mom. What did you guys do for mom and dad? You know what I mean? That kind of thing. There's a lot of different ways you can talk about it depending on the person.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
And I remember you also talked about how often you should revisit it. I thought you made a will. I mean, unless you get like divorced or something, then like, it's good, you know? But you're saying like if you did a will or trust during COVID in like 2020, 2021, you're just like, you need to be looking at it again.
Definitely look at it again. You know, no, definitely look at it again. I think COVID is kind of a unique situation where a lot of people did very emergency planning with any lawyer they can get their hands on. And that meant that some of those documents weren't great. I had an unfortunate situation the other day where I went to an assisted living facility and there was a couple who had a power of attorney prepared during COVID by another attorney, and it just was not done correctly. So they couldn't use it. And thank God that they still had the capacity to fix that mistake.
Okay.
But in general, I think a great time to at least look at your estate plan and see how it's going is going to be every 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
But if anything changes, if you get divorced, if you get married, if you buy a piece of real property, sell a piece of real property, buy a business, sell a business. As your kids start getting a little older and graduating college, that's a great time to revisit it as well.
Yeah. Okay. And I think someone told me, was it you? I don't know if it was you who told me. Someone told me they're just like, on top of the minor, they're just like, do not expect your 19-year-old who is a sophomore at NYU.
It was me. It was me. I definitely said that. I think that a lot of people are waiting for their kids to turn 18 so that the kids can take over as executor, you know, guardian, trustee, manager, whatever. And I tell everybody, look, I don't know your children from a hole in the wall. So this general advice I'm telling you could be wrong. Your child could be the most responsible 18-year-old in the entire universe. And I have had a couple of those, right?
Yeah.
They're like business majors. They're very focused, very financially minded. Actually, I think one of my cousins probably would be one of those people, but I have a lot of cousins. But I think in general, your average 18-year-old doesn't have a lot of day-to-day practical life experience. Not that they're not adults, because they are, but most 18-year-olds have not held down a job, managed a financial account, managed an investment account, seen what daily or monthly bills are like, managed a piece of property. And I think that generally you'd want to wait until your kid is 22 or 25 before you even think about it.
I
You
say
want
28.
It depends on, so I picked 25. Everyone's different. I think 25 is a good base to start the conversation with, because the idea is that your average child at that point has been out of their 4-year degree.
Yeah.
They've been on their own for 3 or 4 years. So it's starting to finally hit them what life is like, right? If somebody is in grad school, law school, med school, I would say that adolescence can be extended a little, especially when you go straight from college to college to college.
Yeah.
28 is good, 30 is good. But let's say somebody graduates high school at 18, they go right into working, and they've been managing it that whole time. At 22, they might be ready to go.
Okay. Yeah. I remember I was at a family party and I saw a bunch of my cousin's friends. They were like 22, 23. And I was just like, oh my God, they look like babies.
I know.
And I thought, and at 22, 23, I thought I knew everything.
I know
in the
you
world.
do. You do. Well, so my cousin came up to me the other day at Mother's Day, and she goes, you know what? Working sucks. And I was like, you're right.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
And it's kind of just hitting her now, like a couple of years out of school, what that day-to-day grind is like, how managing things is. And I think that they need that experience before you can expect them to manage an estate.
Yeah.
Which brings me to kind of, I would say, like a slightly more unique position we're in on Long Island, apart from other places. So our houses have an absurd value,
Okay.
right? Like our real estate is rising and rising, and the real estate is just rising and rising and rising. So even if somebody just has a retirement account, a house, maybe a couple $100,000 in the bank maximum, and God forbid they pass away, that kid easily is going to be managing $1 million estate, because that house could be $700,000-800,000.
Yeah.
And I think people don't really conceptualize that until I lay out the numbers in front of them. And I say, if you pass away, your estate is $1 million. Is your 18-year-old equipped to deal with that?
Yeah,
And most of the time it's no.
if you gave me $1 million at 18,
It would be, it's not even a question of like, it would be gone, right? Because what I always tell people is you don't want them buying a Porsche or a Ferrari.
I wouldn't treat it correctly.
It's not even that you wouldn't treat it correctly, which is a concern, but it's also a concern of bad influences. People who don't want the best thing for you. You could be, financially preyed upon. It might lead to a substance use, a gambling thing, a gambling issue, all of these things that can crop up when you're younger and have a little too much to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. So what would you say is a good time as a young person growing up to like start this estate planning? You said house, business.
Well, when you turn 18, you should speak to an attorney about getting a healthcare proxy and a power of attorney, because as it happened with another one of my clients, I was working with them on their estate plan, and I had just come back from vacation, and they gave me a call and they say, oh my God, John is in the hospital with a very serious issue, and they won't talk to us because John had just turned 18.
Oh, that sucks.
So I immediately had to, thank God I had come back, go to the hospital, and thank God he was conscious and had capacity, and we could get that healthcare proxy signed so that mom could deal with it for him.
That's insane.
Yeah.
If you are married, do you immediately, is that like an automatic healthcare proxy?
I always tell people technically versus actually, right? Because I'm not here to like be the boogeyman, right?
Yeah.
I'm not here to scare you with things that may or may not happen. In actuality, if you walk into a hospital with your spouse and you tell the doctors, this is my spouse or this is my mom, and they'll probably talk to them, right? But I always tell people, if your spouse isn't with you when you get into the hospital, or let's say you're on your way home from work and you're in an accident, right? If a doctor questions your spouse or your parent or whoever you want to make those decisions for you, that's when you need that paperwork.
Okay.
Right?
So,
Because if you're in an accident on the way home and, you don't have, you're unconscious, somebody has to step up and make decisions. And if that doctor doesn't, believe that that person is your spouse, or if they just request proof as they're technically supposed to, you want that document. And this is especially a concern with, anyone in the LGBT community. You are going to want that paperwork. You want that paperwork up to date. You want it, all the T's crossed, all the I's dotted, especially in this day and age.
Okay. That's really good to know.
Yeah.
I mean, so how can everybody find you? How can anybody say, I want Nicole to do my estate planning?
Well, if you want to make an appointment directly, you can just call reception at 516-262-4040. You can find me on TikTok, on Instagram, on LinkedIn, Facebook. The Palermo Firm is my handle on I'm pretty sure everything.
Okay.
You could always email me at contact@thepalermofirm.com.
Okay.
If you go to thepalermofirm.com, you can always just book an appointment yourself.
Are you a personality? Are you
Am I a personality?
Are you an influencer?
No.
If I go to your TikTok, am I gonna see like awesome like skits or whatever?
No, I would say I did TikTok a lot in the beginning because, when you're building your business, you don't have as many clients, you have a little more time. I definitely have done like a couple trending sounds, skits, whatever. I'm really hoping to get more into that as I kind of build my team under me and have people be able to spend more time, researching topics that I already know about, right? Like they're all in my head already, but there's only so much I can do day to day, meeting with clients, preparing the documents, keeping up with everything.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming by, Nicole. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
All right, catch you guys later.